Wait, didn't I already rank you? So we're going to do this again. You are always constantly trying to get me to make videos about you. You know I'm a Halloween guy. You know, I like Jason. Jason's cool. But Michael Myers is my boy. So I don't know what you want. Oh, okay. It's Never Hike Alone. Okay. Well, so we're going to put that into the canon now, right? Okay. I guess it's that good. We'll do that. Okay. Here we go. A new Friday the 13th ranking. Why not? What is up, guys? It's time to do another Friday the 13th ranking. Let me explain myself. Never Hike Alone came out after I did my first ranking. That movie was so good that I thought this deserves to be in the canon with the franchise. Also, I've seen a few of the movies that I didn't like as much since, and so my ranking is going to be shifted a little bit from the last time. So that's even more of a reason for me to do this. Plus, I get to show off my wife's Jason painting right there, which is awesome. Also, before I get into this, I know that Friday the 13th has come and gone, but you know what? Jason lives on forever. We celebrate Friday the 13th every day as horror fans, right? I can watch these movies at any time, so I'm not too worried that I'm releasing this after the date because we all love Jason. And so much so that I recently did a revisited of the first movie with none other than Deborah Voorhees from Freddy Part 5. We got together, we had such a blast just discussing this movie for over an hour. And I'll put a card right here. Definitely check that out. I think you'll have a lot of fun with it, and I'm looking forward to discussing her movie in this franchise. So anyway, here we go. Let's get into this. Coming in at number 13, last place. And I believe my last place was different last time around, but after watching them over and over, my last place for this one's going to be Jason Goes to Hell. Let me just put this out there. There are things about Jason Goes to Hell that I really like, actually. I think Adam Marcus was given a huge task. Sean Cunningham was telling him, hey, let's get rid of the mask. So that's what he did. He gave us the movie that Sean Cunningham wanted to have. I thought there were some interesting elements to this movie, and I think if you watch this, putting the Friday the 13th name aside from it, much like we do with Halloween 3, I think you'll enjoy this movie much more, actually. I like the character Creighton Duke. He's a lot of fun. Yeah, there are some major problems with this movie as well, even if you put aside the Friday the 13th issues. But overall, I still enjoy parts of it, but as far as like a Friday the 13th movie, this has to be my least favorite. Number 12. From this point on, guys, I really like all these movies. I'm just going to go ahead and say that right now. But number 12 is Jason X. Jason X is a bad, good movie. That's what it is. It's really bad. You can pick it apart constantly throughout, but there's just so much fun to be had while watching this movie, actually. Uber Jason is really cool, although I think ultimately a wasted concept because I would have liked more of Uber Jason. The characters, the acting is really bad in this movie. But like I said, yeah, I still have a good time with Jason X. I think it deserves next to last place amongst the rest of these movies. Number 11 is going to be Jason Takes Manhattan, and I think this was my last place on my last ranking. Having watched Jason Takes Manhattan since, there are some things I do like about it. I think that last act definitely picks up, and it gets more into like good Friday the 13th territory with Jason. I think Kane Hodder had a lot of fun with this role, actually. Biggest problem with this movie, though, is false advertising. This did not take place in Manhattan. It doesn't even look like it took place in Manhattan. Most of the movie takes place on a boat, or at least the first third of it. A lot of the characters are throwaway characters in this one, so yeah, it's forgettable. You know, it's not a good movie at all. I mean, hell, Jason X might be better than this movie. I go back and forth. Actually, I think Jason X is better than this movie, so I'm not making any sense. Okay, number 10 is going to be Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning. This one was interesting because they had put Jason to bed with Part 4. You know, we thought he was dead. It was the final chapter. So, how do we revive this franchise? Because the fans were still there. Let's have a copycat killer. That's what they did. But ultimately, Roy is a forgettable killer. He's just not that interesting of a character outside of the hockey mask. This has the worst Tommy Jarvis of the bunch, I think. And, you know, the transition from this Friday to part 6 is kind of ridiculous because we're left to believe that Tommy Jarvis was going to take over the role of the killer in future movies, and then that did not happen. But Deborah Voorhees has a very memorable scene in this movie. Might be considered one of the most beautiful Friday women out of the whole bunch. So yeah, a lot of good things about this one. Danny Steinman had a previous career in porn, but Deborah actually said that a lot of directors had their start in porn back in the day. So yeah, we did a full commentary on this movie on ScreamStream with Deborah Voorhees. I'll put a card here. You can definitely check that out. She gives us a lot of great behind the scenes stuff with that movie. Really interesting. Number 9 is The New Blood, Friday the 13th Part 7. This is the big showdown between Jason and Tina. This is the first Friday movie I saw in the theater, and I remember seeing it back then and loving the hell out of it. That big showdown, it was like a Carrie versus Jason showdown, but it was really fun. Finally, Jason had met his match. You know, you really thought that Tina had the upper hand most of the time. Also, this is the first time that Kane Hodder, you know, wore the hockey mask, and he earned his place, I think. I think Kane Hodder is one of the best Jasons out of the bunch. There's a lot of good Jasons in the bunch. He's definitely not my favorite, but he still earns his money. He still does a great job. He tried to breathe new life, literally breathe new life into the character. So you got some throwaway characters in this movie, actually. And also the MPAA completely butchered the hell out of this movie. Otherwise, it might have been higher on my countdown. But the kills are pretty tame in this one. Number 8 is Friday the 13th Part 3. Part 3 has one of the best final acts of the whole bunch, actually. Dana Kimball is a great final girl. And also the 3D in this movie. If you ever like see the actual 3D of this movie, it's fantastic. No kidding. I've actually seen a version of this in 3D, not the cheap anaglyph version, but a real version. And yeah, like I said, it's great. It's one of the best 3D experiences you'll have. Now, Shelley is a controversial character because I am not a fan of the character at all. I found him pretty annoying. I know he represents a certain demographic of the horror community, but to me, annoying is annoying, and I found the guy annoying, so he kind of weights this movie down for me. But as far as kills go, this one has some of the best kills. This is one of the first Friday movies that scared the crap out of me. So Part 3 definitely earns its place in the countdown. Number 7, and this is the biggest change out of this, is the remake. The remake used to sit pretty low on my ranking. After watching it the last time, I did a Drumdums watches for it, and I found myself just enjoying the hell out of it this time. Trent still remains a really shitty, annoying character. That is still there. Cannot stand Trent. But I was willing to forgive his faults in this viewing more so than before. And there's a lot of great stuff that makes up for that. Derek Mears is one of the best Jasons out of the bunch. Derek Mears is phenomenal in this. So good. That's a big plus for me because I just did H2O Revisited, and that Michael is horrible. That just goes to show that if you have a really shitty version of the killer, then it can really ruin the movie. And this was different. This was like the best version of Jason. And there's some great cinematography in this one. You have one of the coolest opening 20 minutes of any horror movie I've ever seen. So yeah, changed my tune about the remake. Number 6, here we go, Never Hike Alone. This movie definitely earned its place in the ranking. I like that it is very different than the rest of the Friday movies. It's more of like a survival, isolated environment type of film. It's really just Jason against our main character, played by Andrew Lady. And Andrew Lady does a fantastic job in this movie, actually. Vincent DeSante is a great Jason. Kind of reminded me of Richard Brooker in his portrayal. Yeah, there's just so many things I loved about Never Hike Alone. I wanted it to be a full-length feature, but for the 45 minutes that we got, it was fantastic. And also, I can't not talk about that freaking last 10 minutes with the great Tommy Jarvis coming back. That was amazing. And I would love if Vincent DeSante was actually given the chance to direct a full-length canon Friday the 13th movie. Because I know technically this isn't canon, but it feels like a great Friday the 13th movie. It really does. One of the best fan films I've ever seen. Really, it is the best fan film I've ever seen. Number 5 is going to be Freddy vs. Jason. For as hype this movie was, it turned out a lot better than it could have been. In the end, it was highly, highly entertaining. Monica Keena is a great final girl in this, actually. You know, I actually liked the human characters in this movie. Human. But you know, the big showdown between Freddy and Jason, it gets a little bit crazy. Ridiculous, even. But still, Freddy, I think, steals the show in this. this is the Freddy that we had in those first few movies. This is a much better version of the character of Freddy than his last few movies in the Nightmare franchise. Jason, on the other hand, is one of the weakest versions of the character. I think if they would have got Kane Hodder to come in and do Jason in this movie, it would have been much better, because this Jason, played by Richard Kurzinger, felt lifeless. He was big, he was imposing, but you know, other than that, just kind of lifeless. But fantastic soundtrack to this one. I always throw it in. It's a lot of fun. Freddy vs. Jason. All right, now we're getting to the greats. Number 4, Jason Lives. Jason Lives is so good. It really changed the genre back then. You know, this was kind of the first time that comedy and horror gelled together so well. This was one of the first like meta horror movies, very self-aware, and I think a lot of future horror comedies owe a big debt to Jason Lives, and it's a really fun movie. C.J. Graham is a great Jason. I think he's a better Jason than Kane Hodder, actually. That opening scene, the Frankenstein resurrection scene, is one of my favorite openings out of the whole franchise. Visually, it's just so cool looking. Seeing Jason come back to life out of the ground is so amazing. A lot to love about Jason Lives. I can't praise it enough. Number 3, and I just talked about this movie with Deborah Voorhees, is Friday the 13th, the original. I think Pamela Voorhees is scarier than Jason. I really do. The performance that Betsy Palmer gave in this movie really kind of made it, you know, on like legendary status. When you think of great slashers, the first 2 that come to mind in my mind are Halloween and the first Friday the 13th, because of the dent that they put in the landscape of horror at the time. You know, it created the slasher genre. Halloween gets full credit for that, but Friday the 13th really, you know, upped the ante. Tom Savini's kills are some of the best out of the genre. And yeah, it still holds up very well. Kevin Bacon's great in this movie with the spear going up through his neck. So many great kills. Yeah, love the first Friday movie. And I'll even say I think this one's probably the scariest of the bunch, actually. You know, the thought of a mother killing all these kids for no apparent reason whatsoever, because she's crazy in the head. These kids had nothing to do with the death of her son. Very scary. Number 2, I constantly go back and forth between my number 1 and number 2, but I'm holding solid. Number 2 is PARTII. PARTII, to me, is like one of my favorite slasher movies ever. Amy Steele is one of my favorite final girls ever. I love Sackhead Jason in this. Sackhead Jason's I prefer over Hockey Mask Jason. That's just me. And I'm not trying to be like, you know, cool or anything for saying that. I genuinely love Sackhead Jason. There's just something about him that's really creepy. And as far as like the characters, the batch of camp counselors, I enjoy this batch the most, I think, out of the whole franchise. So yeah, this one's great. And then my number 1 is going to be Friday the 13th, the final chapter. For all the reasons of my number 2, but this has the best Jason out of the bunch. Ted White, to me, is everything that you could possibly want in a character. This is really, I think, the last time that Jason was terrifying, and Ted White brings it, you know, big time in this movie, actually. You got Crispin Glover being Crispin Glover, just doing the Crispin Glover dance, and I love that whole relationship between him and his buddy, and you know, put it in the old computer. The characters in this one are really great, really great. But then that final showdown between, you know, Corey Feldman playing Tommy Jarvis and Trish, his sister, and Jason is one of the best final acts out of the whole movie, out of the whole franchise. Yeah, there's so many things I could talk about the final chapter. That is one of the revisited reviews that I'm looking forward to getting to the most, because yeah, final chapter is one of my favorite slasher movies ever. So that's it, guys. That is my new Friday the 13th ranking with Never Hike Alone. Go ahead and post your rankings in the comments. If you don't agree with my ranking, that's fine. Don't get mad at me, because I know some of you guys will. Also, come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day, and on Fridays we'll do Free For All Fridays. If you like what I'm doing, hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and